Hi, in this tutorial we're going to look at how to create an app that uses the camera. Now the simulator does not support the camera, so I can't demonstrate for you on the simulator how our app is going to work. So I have some screenshots here so that you can get an idea of what this will do. So first of all, our user interface screen is going to be set up with two buttons, one to take a photo and another one that will save the photo that you've taken to the gallery. And then we have an area in between where we're going to be able to see the image that you've taken from the camera. So this is our initial user interface. So for example, let's say the user taps take photo. So when they tap take photo, it's going to open up the camera view controller. So this is the standard camera view where you can turn the flash off and on if that's available. If you have a front-facing camera view, you can swap the camera view there. You have a cancel button, a button for taking the picture, and then also sliding it over to take video. So in this example, we're just looking at working with images for right now. So the user takes a picture. This is an example of what you would see. The user taps the camera button, and then the camera view will show you the result of your picture and allow you to either retake it or tap the use button. So retake will of course take you back where you can take the picture again, and if you tap use, we want to capture this image and pull it back into our application. So once we've captured that image and we tap use, we're going to bring the image back into our application, and you can see that the space that this image takes up is a UI image view. So now that we're happy with our image, we can tap save to gallery, which will save the image into your camera roll. So by tapping save to gallery, we're going to post an alert just so that we can say that yes, it got that far, shows the user that it did save it, and then when you tap OK, it's just going to go back to this same image again. So that is an overview of what our app is going to do. So now to begin, I'm going to create a new project in Xcode. So I'm going to create a new single view application, and I'll choose next, and I'm going to call this camera demo, and I'm going to make sure use automatic reference counting is checked off, and next, and then I'm going to save my file. And the first thing I'm going to do is go into Interface Builder, and I'm going to set up my user interface. So I'm going to start by adding a couple of buttons and also an image view. Right, this image view is going to hold the image that was taken from the camera. And so I'm just going to say this button is take photo, and then we can say save photo. Now I'd like to set these up in the header file with my actions and outlets. So I'm going to close out of the utilities panel and go into the assistant editor. And I'm going to create two actions. One that's going to open up the camera when they hit take photo, and then another action that will save the image that's in the UI image view. So I'm going to right click and drag from take photo over into my header file, and this is going to be for an action, and I'm going to call this action show camera. And I'm going to use show camera UI, user interface. Click connect and save photo. Again, I'm going to right click, drag in, it's going to be an action, and I'm going to call this action save image. And the image view is going to be set up as an outlet, so I'm going to right click and drag from here over, and we're going to call this just image view and connect. Okay, so I have the elements in my user interface set up with their outlets and actions, and I still need to do some extra setup in my header file. So I'm going to go out of the assistant editor and change to my view controller H file, and I'm going to add a couple of delegates in here. One is for the navigation controller delegate, so it's a UI navigation controller delegate, and the other one is for a UI image picker controller delegate. We looked at both of those in another tutorial, but just basically what will happen is when we click on the button to show the camera interface, we need to call on and use the navigation controller delegate. And then when we're working with the image picker, when we've taken the image, we need to use the image picker controller delegate. And that will let us access things that are in the image picker. So for example, once we've taken a picture with the camera, we can use the image picker controller delegate to dismiss the camera, and it also lets us access the images and media that we captured with the camera. And we're going to also set up one other thing in here. This is going to be for our image picker controller. So I'm going to add some curly braces in the interface section here. And I'm going to initialize an UI image picker controller. And I'm just going to call that image picker. Okay, I think that's it for the setup for the header file. Now let's go into the implementation file. And it put these actions, these methods down at the bottom. I'm going to move them up to the top just to make it a little easier to see in the video. And the next thing we'll do is in our view did load, we're going to set up our image picker. So we're going to say image picker creates a new image picker controller and allocate it and initialize it into memory. Now I'm going to start to set up the show camera user interface and then the save image methods. Now I'm getting this camera information from a tutorial, Apple's developer site, that has information on taking pictures and movies. So I'm going to be borrowing some of the code from this tutorial. So this is a good place to start if this is new to you and gives you some more details and information, but I'm going to scroll down to this section where it says presenting the camera interface full screen. And there's a method here called start camera controller from view controller. And I'm going to grab this entire method. I'm going to copy this whole thing and I'm going to switch back to Xcode, and before my view did load, just so that this is higher up on the screen, I'm going to paste that in. Right, so this whole section is the code from the tutorial from Apple. So we have a method start camera controller from view controller. And so this whole thing is going to handle creating we have an image picker controller for a camera and sets the camera source type to camera and the different media types. We're not going to do any editing in this, and our delegate is going to be ourself. And then finally it opens up the camera user interface. Now to call this method, we're going to include that in our show camera UI. This is attached to our button, the button that says take photo. So again, I'm going to switch back to that tutorial. I'm going to scroll down here and you can see here is the IB action. This is why I use that same name, show camera UI. So I'm going to say just copy this and I'm going to paste that into the method that I already have started up here. Now at this point, if you have a device provision that you can test on, if you were to run this on your device, then you'll end up with this user interface showing up on your screen, and then when you tap the take photo, you'll get the full screen camera interface. And then if you take a photo with it, it'll capture a photo, and then when you say use photo, it won't go anywhere. It'll come back here, but it won't populate anything into our image view yet. So we have to wire that up. So I just tested this to make sure, and it does work up to the point of bringing up the camera, and when you click use for the photo, it comes back to the user interface, but it doesn't do anything with the image yet. So we need to work on that part. So I'm going to paste in some code in here for another method that's going to deal with our image picker. Okay, so we have image picker controller did finish picking media with info. Now I did do a previous video that goes into more detail about the image picker, but just basically when we've used the picker like for the camera or for the photo gallery, and we're finished with it. In other words, in this case, we tapped the use button. It says, okay, we're finished picking the media, so this is going to fire off this method. And this method contains a dictionary of keys and values. So in here, what we're doing is we're creating an image, and we're setting that image equal to the value for the image that was selected. And then we're taking that image and putting it into our image view. And once we're finished with that, we can dismiss the camera, which is our dismiss modal view controller. So that dismisses the camera. Now, I've found that when I do this first time, it doesn't show the image, but then if I try it a second time, the image does show up. So I have a little tweak, a little workaround here in order for this to work. But at this point, this will work if you try it a couple of times. What I've done is display the camera view. I'm going to set the image view of our image to nil. And I do that when we tap the button to take a photo, it's going to clear out the image that's already in there and then display the camera. And I found that that seemed to solve it for me. So hopefully you'll have success with that as well. So now we have it set up so that when you take photo, it loads the camera can take a picture, the user taps the use button, and now it should be grabbing that image and putting it back here into the UI image view. And we still have a couple of more things to set up in here. When we're using the image picker controller, there's another method that we want to make sure is in place so that if the user cancels taking a picture, it will go back and load into our application and not just keep the camera view up. So in our view controller implementation file, anywhere in here as long as it's not inside another method, and again I'm going to copy and paste the code in, okay? And so this method fires off if the user cancels. So image picker controller did cancel. And so what are we doing if the user cancels? We're dismissing the view, which is dismissing the camera. So it looks like the last thing that we need to set up on here is to save the image. So the user's gone through the whole process of going out to the camera view, selecting, taking their picture, deciding that they want to use it. It comes back here to the UI image view, and now they want to save this into their camera roll. So we're going to set up the Save Photo button is already connected to the Save Image method. So we're going to go into the implementation file and we're going to find our Save Image method and set that up. So I'm going to create an image, UI image, and I'm going to call this image to save. And I'm going to set that equal to the image that's currently in the image view. So image to save is equal to our image view image, whatever is currently in there. So now that we have defined what it is that's in that image to save, we have to write it to the photo album. And the method that we have from Apple is UI image write to save photo album. And the image that we want to save is called image to save. And for now, we're just going to put in nil for these other ones, but we could define in here other things that should happen once that image is saved. So I'm just going to say nil for each of those. And then the last part of this save, now this up to this point will save this into the photo album, but it won't give the user any feedback. So I'm just going to put in an alert that will pop up to show that the image has been saved. And then you could go back in and test it and check it and make sure that it is going into the album. So just running this now and testing this on an actual device, I'm able to open up the camera view, right? Open up the camera view by take photo, choosing or taking a picture and deciding to use that. So there's a little button in the bottom right corner that says use. That takes that image, brings it back into this image view. And then when we tap Save Photo, it takes the image that's in here and then saves it into the photo album. So that's the basic overview of using the camera from within your application. And there are a lot of different ways that you might decide to incorporate this. But users really like photos and taking pictures, and so if you have some cool app ideas, I hope this tutorial helps you.